A new study says abstinence-only education programs don't work. So how would that possibly justify a $28 million increase in federal funding for these programs? A recent national study concluded that no evidence exists that abstinence programs delay the initiation of sex or reduce the number of sexual partners among teens. This comes on the heels of a long-awaited congressional report released in April that also found that teaching abstinence didn't decrease the likelihood that teens would have sex. So while those in Congress who know these programs don't work are using them as bait to trade with hardcore conservatives who would like them to work, the taxpayers are stuck with a nearly $200 million bill for it. Here now is Valerie Huber, Executive Director of the National Abstinence Education Association, and Rachel Maddow is still with us. All right, Rachel, let me start with you. I mean, it seems to me absurd that Democrats in Congress can't say we're going to cut it off. Instead, they're using this as bait and constantly saying, oh, you know, we'll trade you, we'll keep in the money for the abstinence-only programs.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this is a trick, because I understand why the Bush administration would ask for this money. They have pushed for this for a long time, and they have resisted all of the scientific evidence to the contrary, that this is a waste of money or maybe even harmful. But for the Democratic Congress to go along with it, I'm hoping there's something I don't understand about that, because otherwise there's no defending it.
All right, Valerie, look, I know you're going to tell me that you disagree with some of these new studies. Look, I believe the evidence is pretty clear that comprehensive sex education is probably more effective in reducing pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, etc. But let's even assume that there's a disagreement. Why do you think, then, that 14 states are refusing federal funding for abstinence-only programs?
Well, we know that that's a part of a coordinated plan by historic opponents of abstinence education, that through misinformation and misguided selective science regarding abstinence education, they are convincing governors that this is not a good plan.
So the congressional study wasn't true?
We know that there are a number of reports that show that abstinence education is effective.
But the congressional, let's talk about the congressional,
Sure.
The congressional study. That one isn't true. I mean, it says that there was no evidence that it works.
Well, actually, what that study does reveal is that abstinence education, we need to have more of it rather than less.
Because it doesn't work, so we got to have more of it to make it not work even more.
Actually, if you look at the study, what it reveals is that you cannot present abstinence education one time to young teens and expect it to have a stick factor. It has to be continued and reinforced throughout their difficult adolescent years. There's a study.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
I'll just interject for a moment. That I feel like what we have learned about abstinence-only education is that not only is it not effective at either delaying or stopping young people from having sexual intercourse, but by pairing it with by making an abstinence-only approach, people who are receiving that form of education get less information about pregnancy, STDs, and HIV, and it makes them more susceptible to those things.
Actually,
I wouldn't argue that it doesn't work. I'd argue that it's harmful.
Actually, that's not true at all. Abstinence education is a holistic message that provides information on relationship building, accurate information on STDs, and yes, accurate information on contraception, all within the discussion of why abstinence is the best choice.
That might be the idea. It's not borne out.
Let's be honest. What you mean by talking about what they're teaching about the use of condoms, etc., is that they don't work, right? I mean, abstinence only talks about the failure rate of condoms.
Abstinence education provides a realistic and accurate discussion of contraception, all within the context of why abstinence is the best choice. Teens are presented all the information necessary to make wise decisions.
What do you do about the fact that 58%, let's put up this number 7 here, 34% of U.S. teens have premarital sex by the age of 20. 58% of teens have had sex before the age of 18. 14% of teens reported having sex with 4 or more people. How do you deal? I mean, I know your argument would be we want to reduce the number from 58% before the age of 18. But now let's deal with the reality, and that is that 58% of them are having sex before the age of 18. I guess that the position of abstinence only is to just go like this and say, oh, please tell me they're not going to do it. I hope they don't do it.
No, the reality is that teens are resonating with the message of abstinence education in increasing numbers. There's trends data to show that more and more teens are abstaining.
That's not what the studies show. You're losing on the studies.
No,
listen, there was a congressionally mandated study that looked at abstinence programs over 10 years on a national level, and it was the results of that study that told us that abstinence-only education does not work to delay or stop teens from having sex before they get married. They just don't work. And so if abstinence doesn't work, it's a waste of money. If abstinence programs are being used to substitute for programs that actually give people usable information about contraception, STDs, and HIV, then they are killing people. They're
Valerie,
not just expensive.
Valerie, you
they're
get the
deadly.
final word on this.
Teens receive all the information necessary to make a good decision regarding their sexual health, and the misinformation regarding abstinence education that our other guest has been communicating is not at all consistent with what is taught in abstinence education programs.
I will say this, $200 million, whatever you think of this, ladies and gentlemen, there's at the very least controversy. $200 million for a program that is at the very least controversial doesn't seem to me to be a very good use of taxpayer dollars. But Valerie
Actually,
Huber, Rachel Maddow, thanks a lot.